Hi, I'm Michelle Begue with a special edition of Latin America Now. But first, as always, our news trivia. What is the average life expectancy in Latin America? We'll have the answer later. Now let's take a look back at the top news stories in Latin America from 2022. This year, we saw 3 presidential elections in the region. Costa Rica was the first country to see a sharp change in leadership, with economist Rodrigo Chávez winning in the second round of presidential elections held in April. Chávez ran as an outsider against traditional party politics. Colombia then followed Costa Rica with an even bigger government change, as it elected its first left-wing president. This comes after decades of right-wing leadership. In June, former Bogotá mayor and former guerrilla Gustavo Petro won in the second round of presidential elections. Citizens were ready for a fresh start. The losing candidate, Rodolfo Fernández, was a populist and firm anti-political establishment candidate. And the last presidential elections of the year took place in Brazil, where citizens elected former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in a very close race against incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. Lula got 50.9% of the vote in a runoff, but Bolsonaro never officially accepted the victory. He remained silent for 40 days after the October election results. Despite public protests, Lula's inauguration is expected to take place January 1st, 2023. And let's not forget the historic vote this September in Chile. Citizens were asked to vote on a proposed new constitution. The draft took a year to write by an elected assembly of 154 members. It was described as one of the most progressive charters ever written, but it may have been too groundbreaking. Nearly 62% of Chilean voters said no to making it law. Chile will now move forward and attempt to draw up a new draft in 2023 with a special constitutional commission. It will be made up of just 50 people, along with the participation of Chile's political parties. And the end of 2022 coincided with big accusations against 2 of Latin America's leaders. In Argentina, Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner was found guilty of corruption charges. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison. The former president also received a lifelong ban from holding public office. Fernández currently has immunity for her role as VP, but she has already announced she will not run for office in 2023. Fernández was accused of participating in fraud by awarding public works contracts to a friend. The lead-up to her conviction was marked by building tension and even included an assassination attempt against her. The incident was caught on camera as she shook hands with supporters outside her home. The assassination attempt and conviction have only deepened the country's political divide. And Peru continues to face a political crisis after Pedro Castillo went from being president to prisoner. He was arrested and sacked as Peru's president after he shut down the legislature before an impeachment vote against him. Castillo was charged with orchestrating a coup, but his supporters claim the coup was actually against Castillo. Now Peru's new president, Dina Boluarte, who was Castillo's VP, has called to move up the presidential elections by 2 years to April 2024. The whole situation has resulted in political protests that have turned deadly. And we cannot end the year's wrap-up without this year's World Cup winner, Argentina, who took home the coveted FIFA trophy for a 3rd time in its history. The images seen all around the world were those of the 4 million Argentine fans in Buenos Aires, celebrating the arrival of soccer star Lionel Messi and his teammates. And now the answer to our news trivia. The answer is C, 75.1 to be exact. A recent study by the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean says despite the setback in life expectancy during the last years of the pandemic, the life expectancy in Latin America is projected to go from 75 years in 2019 to 77 years in 2030. The number of people over 60 in the region, currently 13% of the population, is also growing. And that's it for this year's 2022 wrap-up. We'll see you again soon on Latin America Now.